It's time. Hello, headbangers and lookers-on, and welcome to my podcast. I'm Reuben, and this is Forcefed Cafe episode number 1. That's right, number 1. We're new here, and you've never been here before. But thank you for checking us out. If you like what you hear, please subscribe wherever you find your podcasts, or check us out at forcefedcafe.com. Hey gang, you feeling sluggish? Trying to find some energy for the gym or wishing you could shed a few pounds and are struggling to find just the thing to help you? Then check out High on Life Superfoods. High on Life is the leading provider of hemp-based, nutrient-rich supplements intended to instill optimal health to those who wish to perform at the next level. Listen, I'm not just talking here. I use High on Life products myself. LIT is an amazing hemp-based, vegan, raw food blend that helps reset your body's nutrient balance and kickstarts your metabolism to get you going through the day. Use it as a shake, in a smoothie, or try my favorite. Mix it up with some cold coconut milk and cocoa and voila, LIT ice cream. Do your body a favor, everyone. Go to highonlifesuperfoods.com and enter the code ForceFed10 on checkout to receive 10% off your order. But don't just listen to me. High on Life is used by some of your favorite bands: Suffocation, Trivium, Dark Angel, Testament, Body Count, and many more. These guys know what it means to need to keep up their metal pace. Try it and you will see the difference. I have. highonlifesuperfoods.com. Get it. For this episode, I had the opportunity to have a chat with bassist and vocalist Nick Sagias about his new project called Tribe of Pazuzu. If you don't know that name, that's okay. You'll learn a bit about him today. Back in the 80s, when I was an upstart metalhead from London, Ontario, I first heard of his band, the now classic Overthrow, but I was late to the game. When I heard about them, they'd already called it quits, and rumors became fact, and word spread that Nick had gone to Europe to join Dutch death metal band Pestilence. But that too proved to be old information, as Nick's time with Pestilence proved brief, and he ached to write, play, and perform his own brand of metal. And this is when I finally caught up to what Nick was doing. The early 90s had brought him home to Toronto, where he formed the electronic industrial metal band Soulstorm, with whom he enjoyed moderate success. Fast forward to 2019, some projects under his wing, and a new brutal blackened death metal outfit recently unleashed upon the world. And this is where we find our hero, here at Reuben's Forcefed Cafe. First of all, really want to talk about your new project, Tribe of Pazuzu.
Okay.
I just heard that a couple days ago. It's amazing. It's great. It was great.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
I can't say enough good things about it. And the lineup, like, I'm of course never surprised to see you have a new project, but I looked at the lineup and I was like, holy fuck.
That's not bad.
That is a good lineup. How'd that come about?
Yeah. Well, I've been working with Jason DeVille from Black Element Production.
Yeah.
I just told him my plan of what I wanted to do, and he just started kind of putting things together with people he knew. Yeah, it just kind of came together like that. We just wanted competent musicians that could play the stuff. That's the criteria.
That's good criteria. So is this your project, or is this like a band that's come together and you'll be doing stuff together in the future?
Well, yeah, I wrote everything. It's my thing. So I just got everyone involved to help me out on it, basically.
Great. It's a great album. What are your plans for the future with that?
Right in the middle of working on the next EP, actually, next batch of songs. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now, writing and recording.
Fantastic. You going to put anything together to do live shows and tour or any of that? Or is it you just want to pump out material?
That's really up to everyone else, really. If they want to hear us, then, they should tell someone that they want to hear us and see us.
Fair enough.
Yeah, with everybody's schedule right now, we just have the one EP, so it makes more sense to have, a lot more, at least half an hour worth of material to play a show if we're going to get everyone together in a room,
Yeah, that's fair. Excellent.
Busy guys.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, just saying, like, Flo and John are pretty busy, so, we can't just, like, do like a weekend show here and there, or I guess we could, but depending on the size of the show, right? I mean,
yeah, unless you were to somehow manage to hook up on the tour he's on, right? And then he could do double duty, or one of them could do double duty. It's happened, right?
Yeah, that's up to those guys. I mean, playing their own set, I mean, it's pretty grueling enough, right? So it's truly up to those guys.
For sure. So let's go back a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about your early days. Like, I first heard of Overthrow from Ian. He was going to Fanshawe College with my roommate.
Okay.
And that's where I first sort of heard of Overthrow and Epidemic Records. I was like, holy, like, what is this? And that was actually, for me, that was the window into like the whole Florida and just the death metal scene that was emerging at that point. Because I was, up until that point, I was lost in sort of like Mr. Bungle, fantasy land and, Faith No More worship. And I'd sort of slipped away from like metal for a while. And then I heard Overthrow and I was like, what am I listening to? And then a couple of guys turned me on to, Morbid Angel and Entombed and stuff. And it really, for me, I never really looked back. It's always been like that more brutal sound. So tell me a little bit about the origins of Overthrow, if you don't mind.
Well, I was going way back. I guess that's where it started. So I think we were all about 16, just kind of hanging out in the neighborhood, and we just started, this would be like 86, I would say. That's kind of like a lot of pivotal thrash albums came out around that year, and that's when it was like, take the writing up a step and faster and technical, and Dark Angel, for example, and Creator, and some of these bands like are big influences, right? So
yeah,
the whole German thrash scene at the time. So that's kind of how the sound evolved basically from that. And then I guess around 89 is when you had like the first Obituary and the Morbid Angel album, and that's like kind of game changers again, right? And the death metal thing, and also using the different slower tempos, and stuff, as well as just doing the fast stuff. So just incorporating more of that stuff at the time, and kind of how it progressed, really.
So I was reading the liner notes for the re-release of that of Within Suffering, and I didn't know so you guys went down to Morristown to record that.
Oh yeah.
That must, when you're sort of like altering your sound a little bit and all that death metal stuff's coming out, that must have been a pretty big deal for you, eh?
Yeah, it was a very fortunate thing that happened. Just talking to the right people at the time and who were into what we were doing, and how it came about. I guess we played a show. Funny because now it's like the 29th anniversary of Spiritual Healing from Death, right?
Yeah,
that's today. And they started their tour, I think, 2 weeks later. I remember the first show was in Montreal, I believe, at the end of February. I think March 1st was the Symphony in Toronto, and we got to play on both those shows. And I met Borovoy Bergen from Blabbermouth now, but he was in Metal Forces and Metal Maniac back in the day.
Yeah.
Also other stuff. We found like a lot of these bands. So he hooked us up with Scott Burns and going to Morristown for our first album.
Wow, that's pretty fantastic. So you had Overthrow for a couple of years. What ultimately led to the demise of the band?
Different attitudes, style change, personality issues. I don't know, just
same old stuff
like that. I mean, we're all 20, 21 years old. Everybody wants to do their thing, I guess. I don't know. It's just it's just a weird time. I don't really know what to say about how it ended.
It just ended. So I'm just going a little bit through your history here. I'm just because I think it's for me, I've been listening to your stuff for quite a long time. I probably haven't heard everything because I disappeared into a bubble for a lot of years, but I was aware that you after Overthrow you went off and played with Pestilence briefly. Did that kind of come about the same way recording at Morristown did? Like you just sort of somebody knew somebody and was like, hey, you should do this?
Yeah, a close friend of the band at the time, who I ended up starting Soulstorm with, Dave Mitchell. He told me about Martin leaving Pestilence. So I called up the label and asked them if I could get Patrick's number. I did. So I started talking to him. I sent him some stuff of me covering some of their songs and showing him like the Overthrow stuff, and just went from there. So, you know, I mean, it was just kind of a different scene because I'm not really sure what the goal was at that point, I guess, because I was writing most of the stuff in Overthrow. And then I went to the situation where the album was already written. They already had a set sound and style, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't really even know what my goal was to join them. I think I was planning on hopefully being also the vocalist, but I think Patrick wanted to do all that anyway. So, well, I don't think I definitely know he wanted to do all that stuff.
Yeah. So how long did you play with Pestilence?
A few months. It wasn't really long, but we did end up going to more sound. You know, we played a show in Belgium, a festival with Morbid Angel, Obituary, Biohazard. That was a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah, so it was a few months and stuff, but it just kind of ultimately didn't really pan out, you know, on a few different levels for everyone. So I think I just needed to be more creative again. So do my own thing.
Not long after that, you released Control.
Yes. Yeah. Same year. Everything.
What a like. That's still. I tell you, Nick, that Control demo is still one of the best fucking things I remember from the 90s.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. It was a big burst of everything that was kind of going on, I guess. You know, what I was pent up in the last year, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it just had a new energy, right? Like a lot of people were doing stuff with a lot of people were doing some sort of metal with electronic and components to it. But I don't know, maybe it was something about the time in my life too that demo came out and I was just like, yep, on repeat.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was one of those times in metal where everybody, it was kind of getting saturated and everybody kind of wanted to inject something new into it. So you had like stuff like Pestilence on the third album. They wanted to incorporate more prog and kind of jazz influences, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, and that's kind of way like Cynic and stuff like those, you know, those guys were doing. And that's cool, but not what I wanted to play or write. So, you know, I went the other route and kind of did an industrial version of death metal or whatever, you know what I mean? Just trying new stuff and, you know, just having fun with it, really, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So you started that with Dave, right?
Yeah.
Was your brother on that demo?
Yes, he was.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
He was, I think, the first person we called.
I was actually listening to Darkness Visible earlier today because that version of Endless Human Failure you have on there. When you released that, I'd been going through a huge Hellraiser sort of spree.
Right, yeah.
I was like, what am I listening? I know what I'm listening to. first sounds that came out, right? I was like, what I know what this is. Yeah. Wait. It was great.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think there's also like you mentioned, like we were just talking about like how like the music styles were changing and people were kind of like getting other influences, but also there was a lot of the same influences, obviously, right? So that's why everybody kind of picked up on the whole Hellraiser theme because they were in tune with it. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
That was a cool little element for, you know.
So after that, you started off with like this is my perspective. I'm gonna seek yours here, you know. But you started off with Control and Darkness Visible. It was still very in your face, heavy. And from Euphoria to Paranoia, for me, sort of started to be a little bit more experimental, a little bit more. I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is. Like maybe you're just trying some new stuff out. It was still good. It was still heavy, but it was a little bit less of a punch in the face than Control and Darkness Visible was for me. Is that what you were going for?
Well, I look back at that kind of time, and I'm kind of still trying to put it together. It was a weird time in the 90s.
For sure.
As we were saying, with, you know, there's the other influences. There's like, if you remember, all that stuff was kind of, even though a lot of it was underground, like death metal, it was getting a weird mainstream push, and it was kind of like not fitting, you know what I mean? And so a lot of bands were probably changing to fit more of where it was being pushed into, like radio or video, for example. You know what I mean? Like they would, you know, you didn't see Morbid Angel on there, you know, too often. Like especially like the first album, right? Like, I mean, even though they had a video, we didn't see that too often.
Yeah.
You know, so it was just one of those weird times where I think that like, if you listen to the demo versions of the songs on the album, they did have a bit more, just a different feel to it. But it's not the songs, it's just the way I think it was produced as well, and just had a different vibe to it altogether. And I think the vocals changed a little bit. I don't really know what I was doing there.
You were making music, and that's the art of it,
Yeah, I was
right?
making, like, yeah, I mean, like, I was still doing what I was doing, but I was changing it a little bit. And I think there was different influences at the time. You know what I mean? It wasn't probably where I should have stayed, but I did it, and, it's done.
Yeah.
So,
You just made me
all I
think
can
of
do
something.
now. Yeah.
You just made me think of
Go ahead.
something there when you were talking about, like, there being this weird kind of mainstream push with like death metal and stuff. And I'm just
Yeah.
remembering that, was it Ace Ventura that Cannibal Corpse was in?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Right? Like, and for whatever reason, Jim Carrey seemed to be on this like heavy music kick, and he talked about napalm death on a talk show and stuff. And
Right.
I
Yeah.
was just like, what is happening? What is this?
Yeah. I watched that clip, like, he was on Arsenio, and it just seemed like he was making fun of it. Really, it didn't seem like he was like a fan of it.
And then he turned around and brought Cannibal Corpse into Ace Ventura.
Oh yeah. That was even just being mentioned is not going to hurt Cannibal Corpse at all, right? I mean, they're still going to be an underground band. They're not going to be accepted mainstream, right? But now they have Ace Ventura behind them, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
It's only positive.
You put out From Euphoria to Paranoia.
Mm.
I think personally I missed In Moments of Weakness. I for whatever reason it just didn't cross my radar. But I got Under the Killing Sun, and I was like, again, there's been an evolution here, right? Like, there's been an evolution in the songwriting, and I was like, this is also great. I still always go back to that Control demo just being the one that ripped my guts out and was like, enjoy. But every once in a while I put on Under the Killing Sun, because it's like, it's just got a good feel to it. I really like the feel of that. So, but in those years, the like 94 to 98, there's a bit of a transition there for you, right? Were you playing live less? Were you just sort of hunkered down doing your thing?
Well, actually, I was playing live more, just not with my band, because I was playing in Monster Voodoo Machine at the time.
Right.
Yeah, that's when I was playing. I started off with keyboards for the Pirate Satellite EP and the following shows. And then actually we did a tour with this band in between the two albums, Defcon Sound System. So there was still like a lot of shows and touring. And then there was like the Ozfest tour for when I switched to the bass on with Monster Voodoo Machine, and a whole bunch of other shows at that time, but 98. There was still a bunch of stuff going on. And then what happened with the EP, the Soulstorm EP, is that I wanted to, I don't know why, but I wanted to separate all of the electronic elements from Soulstorm and like, turn it into two different projects or bands or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So what you hear is like a stripped down version of Soulstorm. Obviously the writing has changed too a little bit, because it got a little bit more kind of like a little more primal, a little bit more straightforward, like to be like with the first song, like for example, I was trying more of a transcendental type of hypnotic vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like it's a minimalist type style, like that I was going for on that.
I feel like I could. I knew that. I just I was like, I didn't know what was going on with you, right? So I knew you'd been playing with Monster Voodoo Machine, but I gotta be honest, I never quite really got Monster Voodoo Machine.
Right.
I think they're a great band, just not for me, if you know what I mean.
I enjoyed playing shows, touring on the Ozfest.
Yeah. So when did Sweet Tooth Records become a thing in your life?
Around the exact same time as that EP, actually, because that was the whole point of it. Like, well, one of the points of it, we wanted to kind of bring back that vibe of Epidemic Records. So the first releases were going to be the new Soulstorm and, like, I guess kind of the other project I was doing, which was Sticky at the time. That's what it was called. I just did a single for that. It was kind of more electric pop, electronic stuff. It was interesting.
I have a Sticky T-shirt kicking around here somewhere.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was trying to find it the other day, but wondering if it still fit me.
I'm actually surprised that anyone even knows that project.
I know it because of you. Yeah, at that time I was, I did that radio show in Ottawa, Forcefed, for a while, and I remember putting on a show a couple of times, and this is a good lesson in how to fail at being a promoter, but couldn't get the bands into the country. And I remember calling you up, and you're like, "Yep, I'll be there." After that, like you and I just kept in touch a little bit on Facebook and stuff. And
Was that the Alien radio station show or something? Or
so it was at the Ottawa U radio station. It was called it Forcefed back then. Actually, we did have Alien radio station up one time, I think.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to do something different with that label at the time, just be more, I don't know, like kind of what our listening habits were at the time, I guess.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, it was the late 90s, and there was a lot of already kind of like this weird vibe of getting away from metal, and it's like Toronto's never been a place where it's been accepted too much. They don't like the vocals, the writing, and stuff like that. And it's just like, sure, I get it. It's pretty unique, and it's like it's a preference, a taste. But I mean, there's no push for a lot of the local bands or when a lot of these bands play, like, I don't see like big crowds coming out, and a lot of the stills are buried. I mean, if I go see a show, I want to see bands in the same style. I don't want to, see like new metal bands opening up for death metal bands, or, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate it when bands take other bands of different styles out on the road to give them a shot and stuff. But I agree with you. Like, if I'm going to a death metal show, I kind of want to watch death metal. If I'm going to like a, I don't know, a hardcore show, I want to see a hardcore show. Or
yeah, I mean, if you're spending like, $20, $30, $40 for a show, depending on what the tour is, right? I mean, you want to be entertained, like, like see the bands that you're going in the style for, like the headlining band, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, like when you see these other bands, like, different styles and such, that's cool too. I mean, if it fits and whatever, depending on how many bands are on the bill and what they're doing. But I don't know, it's just, I've noticed that, if I'm paying for a show, that's what I want to see. I want to see death metal.
So is Sweet Tooth, did you do that for a few years and kind of fold that, or is that something you still kind of do off the side of your desk every once in a while?
No, not at all.
No.
Yeah, there's something just that we just did for a couple of years, and I guess at the end of 99, it was pretty much over. So yeah, that was the Soulstorm ended at that time, and it was like, I pretty much stopped playing music for a couple of years.
What'd you do in that time?
What did I do? I was just working, just kind of just not really missing anything really.
Just waiting for it to come back to you?
Yeah, kind of, I guess. I wasn't really too impressed with a lot of things and attitudes and, musicians. And, I guess I didn't really know what I wanted to do musically either. Like, so I did kind of record a couple of Soulstorm songs a couple years later, 2003, just like some demo stuff that hopefully we'll finally release, like, versions of.
Excellent. I'm super happy to see that you're making music again.
Well, thanks, man. Me too.
It's it's kind of funny. You were just talking there about how Toronto's not really been super supportive of metal and things like that. And I find that so bizarre because for such a I feel like it's a long time, Toronto's been such a factory for great bands. Especially like when you start back in the 80s, of course, right? And there was Overthrow, and there was Sacrifice, and Toronto area, maybe, if you think about like Razor, and like there were just a lot of bands that seemed to be Toronto based. And I didn't really see that. I mean, the one thing I did see change was that time. I remember being like a teenager going to Toronto for shows, and they were selling T-shirts in a couple of the shops there saying Toronto's the heavy metal capital of Canada, and I was like, yes, it is, right?
It should be. It should be, right?
Yeah, and that stuff disappeared after like the late 80s, early 90s, and you could kind of sense like it's like Toronto had kind of outgrown it, but it's still there.
Okay, there is an underground, obviously, and if certain bands come through, they will, fill up the Opera House or close to it, right?
Yeah.
So that's decent enough. But I mean, it's usually the bigger bands. You're not going to see local bands doing that, or even hardly playing on those bills. But you also make a good point with, if we go back into the whole Toronto thing, how the whole scene in Toronto started changing around that time, around 93. If you remember, they tried to change the metal stuff into hard music. I don't know if you remember that period in time.
Yeah.
and alternative. Those were like the buzzwords. Like alternative came first, but then somewhere in the mid '90s, they tried to make it into hard music instead of metal. They were like it was like a shame, And it was
Yeah.
like, well, we like metal because of certain aesthetics of it, the whole attitude of rebellion of it, right? I mean, it's a preference right around the loud guitars, the drums, the screaming, right? I mean, it's its own entity, right? That's why we like it. But, the Toronto scene doesn't seem to foster that kind of support for anything that's more extreme than like, kind of like a mid-paced, soft kind of metal approach, like playing it more than that, really. They don't like the fast stuff. They don't like the loud stuff. Screamy.
They like the moody stuff.
Yeah. I've noticed that kind of like doom stuff really kind of, got really popular and stuff. And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I like doom stuff, but I got to take it
Yeah,
in.
me too.
I got to take it in small doses.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to see a whole night of it. You know,
for sure. That would be one of those times that mixing up the styles of bands would be a good idea.
True, good point.
Start off with some grindcore, finish it off with some doom.
Yeah. That's a mix it up type of night for sure.
Yeah. So it's interesting that we're talking about sort of like the music scene in Toronto, and I'm just thinking about like the old days when Drew Masters had Meat Magazine, and then Tim started up Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles, and it like that was just like the Bible for metal, and it always seemed to me to have those two magazines seemed to really preach the gospel of metal out of Toronto, and they both expanded a little bit and kind of went a little farther. And I mean, the Brave Words empire right now just seems to be everywhere, which is awesome for them. But it makes no sense to me that Toronto is not heavy metal mecca, based on the fact that there's such a core of people in Toronto that just know everything about the history of heavy music and metal, and really they're all Toronto centric, right? I was listening to another podcast by Danko Jones, and Danko's I love listening to his podcast because of course he's like a rock guy, but he's also a metal guy. Like he talks about metal in the 80s in Toronto, and it's like I feel like I was hanging out with this guy then. I listened to that. It
was definitely the experience that we all have for sure, right? I mean, we got the magazines. We had a couple magazines. Okay, they were helpful, instrumental. Like I remember when Meat first came out, there wasn't really anything like it across Canada, free. Everybody picked it up. It was, how could you not pick it up? It was free.
Yeah,
had pictures in it. You know what I mean?
And it had bands you wanted to read about in it.
Yeah, you never knew what was going to be in there at the time. It was like always, I remember he had a lot of unsigned bands, demo bands, DIY bands, people putting out their own stuff. So it was like, it was very helpful at the time, and it helped us get the word out there. I mean, it was instrumental at the time for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I guess there's a lot of magazines around that time too, like not just from Canada that were, writing about a lot of that stuff. And so there's always, you're going to get the people pushing the metal and the underground. But I mean, when you're pushing against it and trying to change the terminology and pushing it to places where it's kind of not really, like, I don't know, do I want to hear some grindcore band on Q107? No. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, that's not why I listen to it, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
That's not why I listen to Q107 for that matter. If I heard a grindcore band come on when I'm just, listening to tunes at work, why would I would like it, but you know what I mean? That's not why I tune into that channel, right?
Be like, shit, I just cut my finger off. God damn it. Too aggressive. In terms of Tribe of Pazuzu, are you getting much? When did this project start? First of all, because like I mentioned at the beginning, I just saw this a couple of days ago, and I was like, oh, hello. So when did you start this project, and what kind of interest is it getting?
December 2017. I just kind of ended things with like whatever I was doing. There was like the end of Soulstorm the year before that. There was that band that was doing their Sphera. I just thought, okay, so I was writing a lot, and I wanted to be the riffs I was writing. I wanted to be executed properly, and nothing was happening at that time. And like just on a lot of different levels, it wasn't coming together with the live band. So I came to Jason, Seville, who I was already working with. He was doing the PR for other Soulstorm things, and such. We started putting this together with the intent of having like seasoned players. Like, I mean, it was very demanding, the work. I mean, listen to the double kick that's going on. You know what I mean? It's so we had to choose the people carefully, you know? So, I don't know, so over the course of last year, we were putting it together, 2018, right?
Yeah.
Totally under the radar. There was little things here and there that I hinted at, you know, because it's very hard to keep quiet for a year, you know, especially like we recorded in October. Unfortunately, Christian had to go on tour for Cryptopsies. They did a sold out tour in Europe, and it was pretty awesome for them. So he came back like in December and finished the mix. So we had to sit on it for about 2 months before it was actually done. That was a little frustrating too. And, you know, kind of letting people know little by little that something was happening. So, but I didn't want to really draw attention to it until it was ready. So in January of this year, 2019, when the EP was ready, we had a confirmed date coming out and all that stuff. Everything was lining up. You know, we kind of started releasing the information in mid-January saying, hey, that's something new going on.
Excellent.
And just, you know, wanted to also just let it grow organically too, like that. And just like, I didn't really want to be like, just, you know, here it is, you know, sign up like a lot of bands do, and we'll have some music next, you know, in a year or so, you know.
Yeah.
That's not the intent, right? So we wanted everyone to hear the music and be like, yeah, so now they could be like, okay, cool, I like that, you know.
Yeah, I like it. And after new metal, you know, and you ended up with like that kind of, I don't know, what is this, screamo? It's not death metal, but it's not, you know, I haven't heard a lot of really good death metal stuff that I like, and that's, I mean, that's where I'm putting Tribe of Pazuzu is right up in that death metal, you know, that classic kind of death metal sound, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I'm curious though, how'd you hook up with Randy Harris? I remember, you know, I saw his name and Massification. And I'm like, oh man, I haven't heard that name in 25 years.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that was a band that was like really good, and they had a lot going for them, and then they didn't. And that was,
well, you know,
pretty tragic,
you know,
right?
Right. Okay. So yeah. Which question you want me to talk about first?
Whatever you like.
Actually, I've been noticing for years, I've been going back and like, I've been just discovering like a ton of bands in the last like 2, 3, 4 years. And not just from brand new bands from the last couple of years, but also, you know, from 10 years ago, like all the stuff that was coming out. And some of it, you know, didn't actually go away, obviously, but, you know, like a lot of people weren't like talking about it as much, and there's different avenues of where to find it. So now I'm kind of like getting more in tune with where to find the good stuff. And, you know, there's a lot of underground stuff, and it's thriving. There's so many bands. It's ridiculous. So I think it's just knowing where to look and trying to find the stuff that you like, and like the labels that are putting it out, and because a lot of people aren't writing about this stuff like they used to.
That's
you know
true.
I mean?
Yeah.
And there's so many bands, and you know, when you see like I mean, I guess, you know, Borway's got to make money, but Blabbermouth is a whole different site than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even 10 years ago. So it's you know, I mean, I don't want updates of the new Metallica. You know what I mean? Like, there's like so much like stuff coming out in the underground death metal and extreme death metal stuff coming out, and it's just like, well, I don't, you know, I'm just going to be focused on the stuff that I want to hear. So you got to look for this stuff, you know.
That kind of gets to, you know, a thought I had, like, even before I'd heard Tribe of Pazuzu a few days ago, I was already thinking that I wanted to talk to you and just sort of like have this conversation, because I've listened to, I mentioned Danko already, but one of the things that I often think while I'm listening to his podcast is that there's a hole in the conversations he's having, and I feel like that hole is can be filled with a conversation with you. You know what I mean? Like, he's interviewed, I feel like, everybody in Sacrifice, and that's cool. But, you know, I really felt like your voice is one that needed to be heard, because you've got an incredible library, and I'm not trying to blow, you know, wind up your ass. I really liked everything I've mentioned tonight with your new project being so damn good. I'm like, how can more people hear this? And I feel like it needs to happen. So,
well, you know, without, you know, I mean, there's no friendly way to put this other than, you know, it's Canada. It's a big country, lots of bands. You know, why are we always dwelling on like the same couple bands? You know, maybe the 80s were a little, slim pickings. But I think there's, the 90s were pretty good. And, there's been a lot of stuff that's come out of Canada. But I've also noticed that there's not a lot of unity. So I'm just like, I just want to do my thing. And I don't really never look at it as like a Canadian thing or this or that. Like, we got John in the band, right? And he's from the States. So that's not, what are you going to call it? There's no Canadian sound, I feel. And if there is, then I want to contribute to it. You know what I mean? So and I want to contribute to it the way I did with Overthrow, with the fast stuff. When we came out, there was nobody doing anything as fast as we were doing. Like, we were eclipsing a lot of the bands who were the fast thrash bands at the time, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, and that wasn't even like an intent. We didn't start out that way. It's just like, we were like, I'm a huge Creator fan at the time, Pleasure to Kill. I'm listening to Destruction. That's like, fast was the way to go for me.
Did you catch them on their last tour?
No.
Oh man, I saw them in Vancouver. I think it was like late March, 2017 in Vancouver. Unbelievable to watch them. Like, just like, what a great set. Obituary opened for them too, and they were like, that was pretty fantastic too, but Creator definitely owned it that night.
Right. Yeah. They have a rabid following.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they were pretty close to my heart at the time too, in the 80s, right? I mean, like in the style and influence for me, the whole German scene.
Yeah.
So
they're still putting out good music too. That's nice to see, right? Like, there's a lot of bands that are still around after 30, 35 years, but they're kind of like, they're putting the same record out over and over. And I don't feel that way about creator stuff. So.
Right. I think they're changing a little bit. They've changed, into more like an arena style thing going on with some sing-along type choruses. And that's a different thing from where they came from. But, it's working for them. They like it. We got to get back to Randy, though, like how you mentioned. Massification.
Yeah, let's do that. So Massification was a great band. It was pretty heartbreaking, really, when they had their accident.
Yeah, they were kind of on their way up at the time, and in a short time too. And what we were doing in Overthrow, I think they were kind of like the next step of where it was heading. Because pretty much where we ended, I think they were together before we split up. But, I remember seeing them more around like 91, 92.
Yeah.
And I think I was already doing Soulstorm at that time. So, they kind of were like taking the torch, with and they were adding a little bit more of the death metal and the brutal vocals and stuff like that, way lower than what I was doing at the time. So it was just a progression and stuff. And then I think, everything they were going to do an album. They were already doing some pre-production. Things got cut short a bit. So
they'd been signed too, hadn't they?
I think they were looking at signing to Fringe.
Yeah.
If I have my facts right.
Okay.
Actually, Randy just recently told me about that part of it. I didn't know about that. So he was in a band with also Jason DeVille. They went to school together and stuff. So that's how they know each other from the London area. We already had John and Flo, and I wanted someone to play leads on the EP, on all the music. And his name came up, Randy. So we got together. He kind of had the same style of lead that I was looking for. We went from there. And so, and then he did the rhythms too. So it just kind of worked out really well.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to see. I mean, I don't know what he's been doing, but I'm glad to see him playing. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was strange because that wasn't our intent. We wanted to find people who were still playing and ready to do this, and had their chops up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of just finding someone who's just like in it for fun or whatever for once in a while, and they don't have their sound or the songs or you know what I mean. They don't know what they're doing yet. Next time we'll figure it out. And it was just like I've been working with like people like that, so we didn't want to go like that route. But Randy was like really good with the solos, and he was so totally committed to like just doing everything and learning all the songs. And he already had everything down so fast, and the picking was really important on this. To be able to match it up with like the kicks that were going on, like how fast the songs were. Yeah, he's a complete blessing. Okay, I was so worried before. You know what I mean? Like not like worried, but I mean, you didn't know what to get. So worked out so amazing though. Couldn't have planned it better.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So you're working on an EP now, another EP.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Is that the way it works now? Is everybody like I'm seeing a lot of EPs? Is that how it works? People are just going to put EPs out?
Is that a problem?
No, I'm just
like, what do you think?
I don't
like.
Well, I think it's fine. I mean, because there's often so much time between albums,
right?
Well, especially like a lot of bands will, they'll put a product out and then go on a tour and they do the whole cycle, and then like 3 years, 4 years later, they put another album out. And I'm noticing that seems to me that there's more bands putting out EPs, and then they do I don't know, 3-4 months of touring, and then they'll put an EP out, and 3-4 months of touring, and then they'll put an album out, right?
True. Yeah.
So, and I think that's fine. I just want to hear music. So, I'm just wondering if it's a trend.
I feel the exact same way. So this is my reasoning for putting out EPs. I don't know if it's everybody's reasoning, but I mean, I have talked to a few people and they do agree. But it's more like if I took the time to write a full album, which actually I already kind of have, like all the songs. But I mean, if I spent the time and we're learning all, like, say, 10 songs and doing all the work for 10 songs, the album would have been recorded by now. You know what I mean? And then it would just I would have had to wait another year, basically, I mean, if you think about like 5 songs a year, roughly, I mean, I'm sure you could do more. I'm just giving you simple math of what we just did, right, with the EP.
Yeah.
So now I just feel like, here's 5 songs. Let's go and record them. Bam, bam, bam. More focus on the songs, more focus on what we're doing, and get it out to the people who want to hear the stuff sooner. You know what I mean? Instead of wait 2 years. Right now, we don't have enough material to play live, so having a second EP will actually remedy that. And then who knows what's going to happen. But when I came to Jason with the whole plan, it was to do 3 EPs. And I didn't really look further than that. I just knew that's kind of what I wanted to do. And so far, writing for the second one is kind of begun. So that's where we're at right now. Will there be a third EP? I don't know, maybe a full album. Do people listen to albums anymore? I mean, I do. But everything I download or everything I have, like that I listen to music that I put it on random, right? So I'm listening to one band, it goes to another band. If I listen to the radio, right? But it's all like that's all the taste that I want.
Yeah. The only time I listen to an album all the way through is if I've got it on vinyl.
Right. Okay.
Well, that's not totally true. Like when I first discover something, I'll listen to it all the way through a couple times, and then after that, it's exactly what you said. You kind of put it on shuffle, or it becomes part of a play mix, or something like that. So
you're picking like a couple songs, or like you're not gonna put in a whole album on your playlist of 10 or 15 songs or 20 songs, right? Because that's half your playlist, right?
Yeah.
So you're gonna pick your favorite songs, a couple songs, and then a lot of songs get missed on albums too, I find. You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily if they're the last song on there, but there's always a couple songs that just go totally under the radar.
The deep cuts.
Yeah, that too. And also the way sometimes they're formatted, like if you have like 10 songs, sometimes you'll have like a moody intro, and then somewhere in the middle, it's some sort of other thing going on where it breaks up the album. And, it's just like, it's a little, with the EP format, I just feel we could just go in and out, knock it off, and just bam, 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 just be aggressive and intense about the whole thing.
Excellent. So we've got, so this one just dropped on February 8th.
Yeah.
When do you expect EP number 2 to?
Hopefully end of the summer, going to the studio again and record. By next year, it should be out, and hopefully by then people will want to see shows, and they can tell somebody, hey, we want the Tribe to come here, and we could go there.
Well, I'll pass the word on.
Thank you, sir. That's all we ask, that's all we could do.
Great. Well, Nick, I don't want to take too much of your time. You've given just about an hour here. I really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you.
Well, thanks, man. Really appreciated doing this.
I love talking about the old stuff too. I mean, I'm not feeling 20 anymore, so it's good to good to look back. well,
no, I think this is like there's more in-depth answers to a lot of the stuff we're talking about, like for like the whole 90s. Like I have a lot of thoughts on that of what happened.
Oh, maybe we could talk another time about just the 90s.
I've noticed this whole, like in the last like 10 years, this rediscovering of like the stuff that excited me when I was younger. And it does feel like a youthful type thing. It's not like, say, like a midlife crisis as such, because it's been happening for my whole life. It's just like a few years I kind of lost focus or whatever, you know what I mean? Or just kind of got away from it a little bit just to recharge the batteries or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I get that. That's exactly the kind of feeling which has caused me to want to actually do a podcast. Right? I miss that. I miss being involved and having conversations with people who are producing the stuff that I listen to, and really the soundtrack to my life.
That's awesome. Thanks for doing this kind of thing, because you know, I know it's a labor of love, just like the music is, right? You know what I mean? Like, so. You know, just any way you could spread the word or be in contact with like a sort of a scene. I think the scene is made by, it's not like a local thing. I think it's a global thing.
Absolutely.
You know, like, you know people all over the place that do this, that does that. You know, this guy's in a band, this guy's a promoter. You know, this guy does merch. You know, this people take photographs. This guy got a zine. You know, everyone contributes in a way, right? And it's just like, you just got to find these people, dial them all in.
Excellent.
That's my final 2 cents.
For sure. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks a lot, Kev.
You have a good one.
Thank you.
Cheers.
You too, man.
Indoctrinated into enslavement, we'll fight archaic doctrines, conditioned mind not to question. It's still within a fear that grows, deceiving minds, perverse agenda. Indoctrinated into enslavement, misinformation and propaganda, everything ingrained within us, influencing through education, manufactured in our system. No free will, condition through education. Able to solve your revolutions been so long, through years of self-reproach, resigned to a dying system. You've been absorbed in your mind. No free will, condition through education. Hard to sell your revolutions been so long, through years of self-reproach, resigned to a dying system. You've been absorbed, degenerated, indoctrinated into enslavement.